Good afternoon. I am your host and moderator today, Daryl LeBerry, and we have a terrific panel, and we're going to be speaking out about a very serious issue that impacts the entire world, but we're going to try to be a little bit more specific how it relates to athletes and student athletes in colleges, professional high school as well, throughout the world, and just how we can better inform people and also how we can better deal with and see the signs of mental health issues that we're dealing with today. Today, our first guest is Mario Mays. He's the founder of Beyond the Bench. We have John Kennebrew. He's a mental health specialist, counsel for community wellness. We have Eric Hewson. He's the founder of Same Here Global Mental Health Movement. And we have special guest student athletes, Nadia Torkman. She was a track athlete at Chico State and also the creator of Scratch the Stigma campaign. We have Luke Reed, who is the sports information director at Chico State. We have Kyle Sturdivant, who is a men's basketball student athlete at Georgia Tech, and Shambari Phillips, who is a former student athlete, men's basketball player at Georgia Tech. He just recently graduated. Congratulations to Shambari on that goal. To begin our show, we're going to introduce Mario Mays and kind of get the origin and the basis of Behind the Bench and how mental health plays a huge factor into the transition of student athletes as they move into the next portion of their life. So Mario?
The vision of Beyond the Bench, it came from a culmination of experiences that I had as a student athlete and also some experience that I had as a coach. Our goal for Beyond the Bench is to educate, empower, and equip student athletes as they transition from one phase of their careers to the next. And to me, mental health is such an important piece because of the different dynamics that student athletes go through, because of all of the different emotions that they face with the pressure to perform, and also just in transitioning from one phase of their career to the next. And our goal was just try to help kids to understand that transition, to give them ideas and just support as they transition from one phase of life to the next.
I personally went through that, and obviously I've had friends, and at being a coach, I've been dealing with guys who, or females, who don't have the opportunity to play professionally, and that next phase of their life is terrifying, and they just don't know what to do because a lot of people, whether their families are living vicariously through them, or just not allowing themselves to have other options, that put all their eggs in one basket. And now when that basket, that pro opportunity doesn't present itself, and your friends and your peers are going pro, how do you deal with it? And it can put a serious mental strain on you, and you feel very alone. So I think that's a topic that we definitely need to come back to. And we appreciate everything you've done with Beyond the Bench, and looking forward to kind of talking about all the aspects that Beyond the Bench brings to the table. Let me read a quote here from Kristen Hoffner. There's a stigma about mental health and seeking counseling, not just with athletes, but with most people. And that's an Arizona State University professor of kinesiology, Kristen Hoffner. So when you hear that statement or read that quote, let me get some reactions and initial takes. Let's start with you, John. What do you think when you see that?
Thanks for the invite and for being here as well. I'm John Kennebrew, and I'm the CEO for the Council for Community Wellness. Especially when it comes to stigmas, I mean, there are so many out there, especially when it involves minorities, athletes as well. In general, there's just a mistrust of mental health professionals. Stems back to history in general. Incarceration is a big part of some of the stigmas that a lot of males face because they feel like when mental health arises, treatment means that it could be incarceration. Our agency, we have a nonprofit division called the Showcase Group, and we work in juvenile detention centers as well. And so we see the early onset of mental health issues arising, and we try and address them. The earlier we start to address mental health issues, the better. And so we see these stigmas, these cultural barriers that also play a role in just who do I go to as far as seeing a solid mental health professional? Is this person going to understand the cultural relevance of what I have going on as an individual? So I definitely personally see a lot of the stigmas that young athletes are having to deal with, but also families and communities, especially across the state of Georgia.
Eric, your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Related to the quote that you put up there specifically, where it talks about athletes, my background is working in professional sports. I was with the NBA league office, 2 NBA teams, and then 2 NHL teams. And, my own story, I know you all just shared some of your stories of essentially having a mental health decline, what felt like in the middle of nowhere when I was down with the Florida Panthers, and then being pumped with 50 different psychotropic drug combinations, TMS therapy, shock therapy. And what I came to find out was the reason why I went through what I went through, my ultimate diagnosis ended up being PTSD, but it was based on all these life experience I had had. I had a brother growing up who ran the gamut of going through cancer twice and septic shock and being in a coma for 3 months and breaking his femur bone and being a body cast for a year, flying out of a Jeep, landing on his head, cracking his head open, losing partial vision in his eye. I had 3 close friends, age of 25, same year, all pass away of heart conditions. The reason I give that background related to the quote that you're sharing, Daryl, is that I think as a society, and I took it when I first went through it because my relationships were with professional athletes having working in sports, is there's this concept of this is an athlete issue, right? And I do think for this topic, we should definitely dive in that it's an athlete issue because there's so many pieces of being an athlete about perfectionism. And like you said, careers ending earlier, whether that's college to pro or pro and actually ending early as a pro. But the truth is, as our society, athletes are a microcosm of the rest of society. Literally, I don't think there's a person on this entire planet. We hear the stat 1 in 5 people are mentally ill. That might be a true statistic, but I believe that 5 in 5 people face mental health challenges. And so athletics are no different, where those challenges might come up at an earlier part of our age because of the way in which we are living and the careers that we have, and we have to face some of those things earlier. But that's what I love about the quote that you just shared, is it's not about just athlete specific. It's doctors, it's dentists, it's frontline workers. Like, you name any profession, if it's based on life experiences, find me a person who hasn't been through difficult life experiences. I'd love to meet that person.
No question. Nadia, what are your thoughts when you hear that, when you read that quote?
Yeah, I think the quote is very valid and relevant. And like was said before, I think that, everybody struggles, at least at the very least, with a bad day here and there. And it's, today, it's something that's, mental health is something that's very hush hush. Like, it's not very openly talked about. It's not transparent between, you and your friends, or even you and your coach, or you and your loved ones. It's not something that gets talked about a lot. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's a stigma around it, because, when someone expresses those things, people may jump to the conclusion that there's something wrong with them. That's not really the case. Like, we're only really human, and we go through these things, and everybody, has their different situations and different experiences, and that needs to be, validated, and it needs to be connected with resources if you need that thing. One of the things that I realized, going through my campaign and launching it, is there's a gap kind of between resources for mental health and, the body that potentially needs them. So in our case, like student athletes, like, there's so much on your plate, there's so much that you're going through. It's really difficult sometimes to seek out the accurate help you need. And so that's something that I tried to do with my Scratch the Stigma campaign. There's so many great community and campus resources and online resources that are available, and so trying to bridge that gap to make it really accessible and familiar to student athletes on our campus, to go say, hey, like, that's something that I could benefit from, and that's okay. Like, I'm doing this to better my overall wellness, to better, my status as an athlete, to, like, improve my game, and just to overall learn more about myself. And I think that's a huge part of mental wellness. Is like, you can be battling an illness, or you can just be like in a rut or anything. But if you kind of take advantage of those resources, you're ultimately learning more about yourself. And to do that is to live a better lifestyle. So yeah, I think that it is something that the quote brings to light, is that it happens to everybody and it needs to be conversed about.
Nice. Shimbari, what are your thoughts?
Kind of everybody hit it right on the head, in my opinion. As Eric mentioned, you go through certain things and it kind of shapes and molds how you handle later situations. Past experiences are definitely just, I feel like the pavement, and it leaves, it kind of shows you who you are in a sense. I feel like your true colors comes out when you hit adversity, how you handle it. And how you handle adversity, in my opinion, is a sign of, really good mental strength and, just self-awareness to be able to overcome certain things and certain obstacles that you're going to face. It's the inevitable that you face obstacles in any journey that you're on. It's just how you handle it and how, you overcome it to see where you end up.
Nice. So, Nadia, do you have any personal stories, whether it's something that you individually went through, or a teammate, you obviously don't have to mention their name, where mental health was obviously something that was involved, and then how, in your particular situation at your school, did that person or you go about getting some help, and was it a difficult situation?
Yeah. So, me personally, like entering into college, I really struggled to relate with, people going through like mental health problems or anything like that. Like I didn't get it. And, entering college and going through that and facing adversity and, challenges and hurdles and all of that, I've gone through some things and faced, my own challenges with that. And I'm gonna be honest, like I didn't talk about it. I kind of internalized it. And no one knew, because I'm just the type of person that you wouldn't be able to tell what's happening on the inside. And so, when that kind of phase was over, when it kind of like died out, I looked back and I was like, wow, like I was really unhappy and I didn't reach out and I was very, isolated. And I was like, wow, this is something that I don't want to do again. I don't want to go through that by myself again. And so, if I am in that position again, like I'm definitely going to utilize the resources available to me and talk about it. And since then I've been taking, smaller steps to make sure that I don't get in that place again. But that's one of the reasons why this topic has like piqued my interest and I'm doing work in it, because just from a personal experience, and I know everybody's experience varies, but I just kind of shut everything out and didn't talk about it. And it was my problem and this and that. And with teammates, like here and there, I found that when we are having this discussion and, kind of trying to be transparent about it, a lot of people, they're like, yeah, well, I was, going through this, or I did have anxiety. And they're talking about it like after the fact. They did have it. They didn't talk about it until afterwards. And I think that's a relevant to bring up because, kind of like hindsight's 20/20, but when you're in it, I think it is important to realize where you are at and to seek help if you do need it.
And Nadia, you make some great points, and I think you handled it like most athletes up until this point have handled it. I think that people have a viewpoint or an ideology that asking for help, especially mental health, is a weakness. So unfortunately, instead of going and getting the proper help and even maybe asking your coaches or talking to your coaches, I think people internalize it, which can make it worse. And then people around you don't understand what you're going through. And you might not be performing as well. So people just put it on performance. He's not playing well, or she's not performing well. So they're just down on themselves when it could actually be a much bigger scope and a much bigger picture. Shimbari, quickly, obviously you transferred from Tennessee to Georgia Tech. I think you had some, I'll let you speak on what you want to speak on, but I think you had issues at both programs as far as playing time. So I know that can become a mental health issue, because that can be a mental strain when you have expectations for yourself, your family has expectations for you, your friends have expectations for you, and you know that you're capable of playing well, but things aren't going well for whatever reason. So how did you handle it? Did you ever ask for any help? Would you do something differently now if you did not? And just kind of give us your perspective on your career.
So, senior high school, really high school, whatnot, pretty highly recruited, thought, you were on top of the world. basketball was inevitable. You were gonna go up big places, but etc. Starting out in Tennessee, it was great, with that staff played, got thrown in the fire pit early as a freshman with one of our senior guards going down. So I had to kind of step in and fill some big shoes. And then, sophomore season, kind of took a step, but, kind of stayed stagnant. And, I felt like the best bet was for me to transfer.
Okay.
Landed up at Georgia Tech, and it was a completely different atmosphere than Tennessee. And I will say Tennessee versus Georgia Tech had two completely different paths. And I truly believe that, from a basketball standpoint, staying at Tennessee, who knows what could have happened. But Georgia Tech has set me up for life, in my opinion, just, from a classroom standpoint, from a networking standpoint, from the people that I've met. These are lifelong situations that I'm invested in at this point. And I can never be happier with the decision I made 3 years ago to transfer because, I think it was Mario or you, D-Lab, that mentioned about putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
All my eggs were in one basket. And once I hit that wall, once I hit adversity, I started out playing, and then I started not producing to the capabilities that people knew I was capable of doing. I had to take a back seat, and then you realize certain things about yourself. You start to try to figure out yourself. I was trying to figure out myself for 3 years, and it didn't click until probably my last season, and that's when I kind of was like, you know what, I'm not playing. I'm playing through my guys, and I kind of just invested my time into practices, weight room, kind of trying to get everybody else better. And people in my corner may see that as, I'm kind of giving up. That's not what it is. You know what I mean? I'm kind of, because if I would have took a route where, I kind of took away from the program, I would have been the enemy. I would have been like the bad guy in the situation. But instead, I wanted to, turn it into a positive of some sorts. And I think that's what I did. Just trying to stay positive with all my teammates, be a great teammate, be coachable, although I might have not have gotten the playing time that I wanted. Again, nobody could say that I was a bad sport. Nobody could say that I had, any negative things to say about any coaches or anything, because it's like, it's a game, and it's a business at the end of the day, and I understand that. So.
Great. Hey, what an answer, man. And, I've known you for a long time, and just the maturity and just the growth that you have had to even have that kind of conversation with yourself, and to realize that you need to have more value in yourself outside of an athlete. I'm gonna be honest with you, I almost teared up right there listening to you. That was pretty impressive, and I'm looking forward to what you're gonna do in life, because I'm seeing some big things coming for a guy who has that kind of perspective. Mario, so as we've touched on a lot of different things, I think what Shembari just said kind of feeds into your program. I mean, it's almost like he just threw a lob to you to kind of explain to what student athletes in general, from the conversation we had yesterday, what their outlook should be in general, and that they have more value than just the athlete. So kind of touch on what Shembari just said.
I think the most important thing about what Shembari said was, I know that you were a person he was able to talk to. I was a person that he was able to talk to. His mother was in his corner. Coach Steve Bouye was in his corner. Mm-hmm. So he had a great support system when he hit the wall. And I think that support system was able to help him understand that there's a bigger picture. And I think that that's what we have to do in the coaching community when we have athletes that struggle and deal with issues, whether they're mental issues or whatever it is. And I'm not saying it was so much of a mental issue for Shembari, but just being able to provide that support for kids to understand that there's life after athletics, and to help them in that transition. I think that's the biggest thing for myself. When I was a student athlete, that transition was so foreign, and I was just so used to sports and the rhythm of going to class, practicing, lifting, and that whole 9 yards. So when it was over, the transition into the next step of life was very, very difficult for me. And so because I had that experience, the young men that I had the pleasure to coach, I feel like it's my duty to be able to help them understand that transition and to let them realize, like, yes, those feelings are fine. You know, it's nothing wrong with you when you have those feelings of what's next? What do I do? And I think, like I said, we in this coaching community, being mentors and guys that's been around these kids, we have to help them to understand also that you're not a bust because you didn't make it to the NBA.
No
You know, there's so many different opportunities that you can land within your sport and be employed. You know, just helping guys to understand, you know, the front office of these organizations. It's a lot of jobs in those front offices.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are starting to see now, you know, athletes that come out of, you know, playing and they go into the front office and they're doing work. Sports broadcasting is an opportunity. Being an agent, it's just so many different opportunities that I think we have to do a better job of enlightening our athletes about that are out there. So, you know, I'm proud of Shambari. I feel like just watching him grow as a young man, it kind of makes me feel like, you know what, the people that he had in the support system, they done a heck of a job to help him get through. Because I've seen other guys that went through what Shambari went through, and it didn't turn out as well as Shambari. Like, I think he should be the spokesman and the poster guy for the way you handle adversity and all of that on the next level.
I agree. And, you know, it's very cliche, but everybody's going to go pro in something. Unfortunately, it might not be the sport that you chose to go pro in. The numbers and the statistics tell you that it's very, very difficult. A lot of things have to go great. You have to be very lucky. You have to be in the perfect situation. The right person has to see you. You have to take full advantage of every opportunity you get, but you will be pro in something, and you're going to have to find a way to generate revenue to support your family, and to understand that you can do multiple things, and to get information on different ideas and find different paths that you're going to be good in, is something that we have to do a better job of as a community, as a group. And I think we also have to stop putting so much pressure on student athletes to make it pro in their sports. But that's a topic for that. We can do a whole nother show on that.
Right, right.
So let me go to the next question, for John and Eric. We'll go John first. Is it possible to make progress without a widespread culture change when it comes to the stigma and organic efforts to address it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's possible to make progress, but it really starts at kind of the ground level. Of course, within therapy in general, there has to be that culture. And like we were just talking about, you know, that support system is going to be key in developing the culture around understanding mental health and knowing that there are stigmas, however, we can get around them. And that's going to require a lot of education for teams in general, coaches, just based on overall health and mental health. Some first aid mental health awareness would be key, because a lot of people just don't have the basics. You know, just moving into meeting students and participants, athletes who are in situations where there may be some judgment, and just truly understanding as a leader, you know, not to cast that judgment and kind of focus the team focus on leadership, really building leadership skills, resiliency skills. That's going to be very important in kind of helping to develop a culture around mental health. I know, you know, what's happening, especially as we talk about stigmas, we see a lot of studies that are focusing on the overdiagnosis of mental health disorders, such as ADHD and conduct disorders, especially in African American males. There's an instant, you know, aggression that's kind of focused on, but there's underdiagnosis when it comes to disorders such as depression and anxiety. And so, you know, race plays a major impact on mental health disorders and what that looks like and how it's diagnosed. And so even with everything that's going on with the media, things that are going on in society today, you know, we know that racial trauma increases depression. So we'll see this, and we'll see this cast in our teams as well, that anxiety is there, that post-traumatic stress is there because of the images that we are seeing. So really creating cultures, you know, whether it's a sports team or whether it's a classroom setting or wherever it is, around the importance of understanding mental health and all that comes with it.
John, you said a mouthful there, and you almost got us off topic because it's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now.
I had a lot on my mind.
We're trying to stay on topic right now, Eric. You go ahead and answer the question. We might have to come back to what you just said.
It's all topics you and I we discussed a little bit yesterday. Shambari, I wanna applaud you for your answer, man. I think perspective is the greatest superpower every human has, but you almost have to go through adversity to gain that superpower. And what I'm very impressed with about you is I think when people think of mental health, I heard a comment before, maybe that's not mental health, maybe it is. Going from a place where you had expectations to then a place where the expectations didn't work out the way that you wanted them to in any aspect of life, whether it's playing time, whether it's having a parent in your life, and then you lose that parent, and now you have to learn how to live life without that parent. That affects mental health. And so absolutely, Shambari, what you went through affected your mental health, and you found a way, instead of using that in a negative way to drive you, you found a positive way to help your teammates out and to say, I'm going to make this team better. I'm going to use the resources that I have at my school. That's an unbelievable perspective shift that I don't think many people get at your age. So I want to start with that. I know that's a little off topic, Daryl, to the question that you asked, but that hit me in a big way. Like you said, you almost teared up. When you hear young people bring that up, it goes a long way. In terms of whether there can be change from a societal perspective, let me just say this. I don't know that the media does us the greatest service right now in terms of changing perception. And I'll give you examples. Britney Spears has depression. She shaves her head, and we see pictures of her head shaved. Let's use one of the most recent ones, Delonte West, right? He's on a street corner. He's got his shirt off. He's mumbling. What does the press say? Oh, that's what bipolar looks like. No, that's not what bipolar looks like. But Delonte was self-medicating at the time, from what we hear from all the folks who were close to him. And it's unfair that someone who's going, I think it's great that people came to his defense, but the press doesn't understand what mental health and what these complications are. And they like these salacious terms, and they like putting the disorder label, and they like putting the erratic behavior together. And so that's what we hear. And so I'm going to echo what John had to say, which is the way the change happens is by organizations like ours on the ground doing educational type of programming, whether it's in schools, whether it's in colleges, whether it's at offices, and explaining that mental health is not about disorder alone. Mental health is part of a continuum that's based on our experiences that we have. Shambari's, people might say, oh, that doesn't seem like it's that intense. Yeah, that's really intense for a young kid to go through when they had those expectations, all the way to losing someone in your life, right? And so when you look at mental health that way, and you look at it as a continuum about how we're all impacted, compare that to what all of us on this screen, even Shambari and Nadia, who are the youngest on the screen, in K through 12, they were still teaching up until a couple of years ago, and I still don't think it's changed across the board because we don't have many states mandating mental health education. We learned very simple terms that aren't accurate, that depression means sadness. No, it doesn't. It means a hell of a lot more than sadness. There's a lot more that goes into what depression is. That anxiety means nervousness. No, it doesn't. There's a lot more that goes into anxiety. That PTSD is for servicemen and women. No, it's not. PTSD can affect anyone. I know that personally. So it's these programs that we bring on a ground level and a grassroots type of way. And my ploy to everyone on the screen, just when I speak in general with everyone, is if we get this idea out that it's 5 in 5 that need help, and it's not the 1 in 5 diagnosed with disorder, there's plenty to go around in terms of the help that we can be providing people, because to get to help 7 billion people, I don't know that all the organizations are even out there that we have enough resources to be able to even do that. So there's plenty to go around in terms of the help that we can be providing people.
Great answer, Eric. Obviously, this has been a very good discussion so far. We got to pay a couple bills. We're going to take a quick 30-second break, and then we'll come back, and I'm looking forward to it. Welcome back. We are here with our mental health versus the stigma panel, and we're going to go into our next topic. So far, we've had just a lot of transparency. Everybody's been really organic. We've had some great discussions, and I'm looking forward as we continue on. So let's start with you, Luke. How vital are parents, support systems, and grassroots influencers when it comes to a culture that encourages and facilitates mental maintenance? And obviously, this fits you as a sports information guy, part of an athletic program, and you deal directly with student athletes. So you kind of probably have a pulse and a feel for, some signs and different mood swings and what's going on. So I want to see kind of what your thoughts are, and then also if anything in particular that Chico State has done to help in this forum.
Well, yeah, I think the thing that strikes me, first of all, this has been a great discussion already. I really enjoyed it from the background. The thing that really strikes me is that the 5 out of 5 idea, that we all struggle with this, and to look at each student athlete that walks through the hallway. If you're an administrator on a college campus, as you see that, you think about a span of 4 or 5 or 6 years that you have a student athlete there, or maybe 2 if there's a transfer. But even if you go down to 2, over a 2-year span, what have you experienced in your life? What kind of challenges? What kind of hurdles? And then you think back to when you were that age in your early 20s, and you're just kind of figuring some things out, as we still are, in our 40s, trying to figure some things out. And there's going to be times when you need to talk to somebody, when you need someone to listen, and you need maybe someone that can give you some resources or take you to the person that could really help you. So, as I'm listening to this, it's just striking me that, that idea of the question of how are you doing, if we as a on campus can really mean how are you doing when we ask how are you doing, and not just take good for an answer. It's not, we take it as if we're saying hello.
I agree.
And maybe let's think about it like, no, really, how are you doing? And it's okay to not be doing okay. If we can get that going, and we need the parents, and we need the administrators, and we need everyone who believes in this idea to have some courage and to kind of flick a light on when you say, how are you doing? I really want to know, or I'm struggling today, kind of gives others permission to say, I am too. So that idea, I was in my office yesterday to pick something up, and it was dark because we're not working in our offices right now. And I just flicked on one light, and it struck me as I was thinking about this panel that honesty and that verbalization turns on a light and shines a light in this area and allows others to share as well. So it starts with each one of us sharing and being open and honest.
Great point. I definitely agree. And even as adults, sometimes outside of the professionals here, I think that I don't want to say it's still viewed as a weakness, but it's uncomfortable. People don't feel comfortable in the general public of asking for help and saying that they're struggling, because especially as a male, you're taught to be strong. You're taught to be tough. You're taught to fight through adversity, and sometimes you need help. And now I have 3 daughters, and I see that they respond and react to life much differently than I do. And the way that I was taught, get tough, figure it out, is different for them. I have to treat them differently, and I have to be aware of their mental health and their mental wellness. So I am learning, just as we all are. So this has been a great panel for me to kind of, learn some things as well. Nadia, can you touch base on the question as well? Just support systems, administrators, parents. I don't know if you played any grassroots sports, club sports, just all the people around you, if we all can get on the same page, how they've helped you and how could they have helped you more?
Right, yeah. Just growing up as an athlete, playing various sports all my life, it's kind of drilled into you in the world of athletics. Like, you need to be consistently on your A game. You need to be performing, or else you may or may not get play time. You may or may not make the team. And so with that mindset, it's really hard to prioritize, your mental well-being. And so having some sort of, community or mentor or role model or something that you can, resonate with and reach out to and, be very truthful with is, something that's important. So for all of us that, growing up in athletics, like your teammates and your coaches and all of that, I think it serves as a great resource, if it's established to, communicate about mental health and wellness. And, whether on top of that, parents or teachers or, a family friend or something, just somebody that you have a connection with. I think it's important to have that role model in your life. So for those of us that are still involved in sports with younger kids, like I'm still, coaching and reffing and all of that, like just making it a priority to, casually bring that, into the conversation and into the environment and, kind of foster it from a young age. So there's kind of a ripple effect to where people are not questioning like, oh, should I be talking about this? Oh, is this something people will think I'm weird for and stuff like that. So I think changing the culture by role models establishing, a new norm would be very important.
When I hear you speak about that, Nadia, what I hear is kids or youth have to have someone that they trust, that they can be open with, that they can be transparent with, and that obviously you're being transparent with them. And you have to have a relationship with them outside of whatever their particular activity or sport is. You have to be talking to them about the generalities of life and trying to help them through life. And I think if we do that and we open ourselves up and also show them some vulnerability at times, because obviously we're going through things as well, that they'll feel more comfortable being vulnerable with us. So great points. I really appreciate it. Mario, as a grassroots / high school coach, I think that you guys don't have the resources that maybe a college or university has as being able to bring in professionals. What do you think what would you like for more grassroots and high school coaches to do? And what kind of conversations can they have to make people more aware and to make people more comfortable?
I think the most important thing, what we're doing right now, is a great start. I think we have to continue to have situations and forums just like this. We need to be educated on, some of the things that we need to do. I think one of the most important things is, you touched on it before, like we come from a culture of suck it up, you're going to be all right. Keep pushing, keep pushing. And with all of that, it still comes a lot of added pressure for these kids to perform. So we got to be patient. We have to be willing to also grow from the standpoint of educating ourselves about different ways to attack some of the issues that our kids go through. And we got to start listening more. I think that's the biggest thing. We have to listen to these guys and establish relationships where kids are comfortable enough to talk to you about what they're going through. And I think that's one thing that was great with, Shabari. I spent enough time with him. I think you spent time with him. Coach Steve Bouye spent enough time with him. We were able to tap into him enough that he believed in us.
I think we might have lost Mario for a second. All right, so John, can you touch base with us a little bit about, for the general public or someone who might not have the structure or the organization around them to bring in a therapist or a mental health pro, what can the regular person do to tap into those resources?
Sure. Yeah. One thing I like to tell folks in general is a lot of times we will go to whoever is assigned as a mental health professional. Mm-hmm. And so you should understand that, you're auditioning someone who could very likely change your life or change your life for good or bad. So just like in any profession, you want to check and see, is this person credible? Where are they rated and how are things looking? What are past clients that they've had as well? I just don't want folks to feel obligated to go to the first person that is assigned to them as a therapist, because that's oftentimes when things go left, they have a bad experience. And then from there, it's, mental health treatment is a bad thing. But just taking the time to find someone that you feel like you can build rapport, and you'll know within that first or second session, is this someone I can talk to? because these are very serious matters that you're unfolding, you're unloading all of this information. And so when you haven't developed a tight relationship and built that rapport with that person, it can be difficult to express and process what's necessary. So just know there are also resources. Also, I want to just share NAMI.org, NAMI.org. That is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And they've got a ton of information if you're interested as far as, the signs of certain mental illnesses. You can see some of that. But also, if you feel like you might be going left, or you may be in need of a therapist, or you just need someone to process the situation or talk to, don't be afraid to go into an assessment and meet with a mental health professional. Like, that's okay just to have an assessment and say, you know what, I need to talk this through with a friend, or I actually need to talk this through with a mental health assessment. And so, some of those things we have to decide for ourselves. It can be difficult just depending on the matter. But, we oftentimes tend to lean on our friends. We lean on our church or our religion and so forth. But we have to have it coupled with true mental health services and assessments to actually get a treatment plan in place. So everybody knows when you have a plan in place, it's much easier to follow and kind of gain that balance in your life.
Great info. So we need to get an assessment. When you finally find a mental health pro, don't feel as if you're trapped with that mental health pro. If you don't feel comfortable, you need to know that you can move on to someone else, right, until you get to a point where you're comfortable, because until you're comfortable and you're opening up, you probably won't get the correct help that you need. So great info right there. Let's go back to the student athletes real quick. Shimbari, start with you. Do you think most student athletes give their mind the attention and maintenance that they give their bodies, as far as performance goes, or just in general, to be honest?
I didn't understand the importance of sleep until I probably became a college athlete. And even then, I still took, I didn't take advantage of my sleep. People think you got to really love it to be an athlete. And, certain programs are harder than others, but you just gotta, you wake up, you got weights, you got conditioning and whatnot, you got class, you got tutoring, you got practice, you got maybe tutoring after that. So and then you got to go home, maybe you got homework, but we're 18 through 21 years old. So we have a social life. So realistically speaking, we're going to force that social life into it at some point. And that's not always at our advantage, I should say, when it comes to performance wise, maybe the next day, if we have to be up at 5 a.m. So I think the biggest thing when it comes to, do we focus on the mental side of things as far as the physical, as much as the physical? I think more athletes need to value sleep more. And I'm just going off, personal experiences. There's been times where maybe I've been up late, maybe it's work, maybe it's just socializing. And the next day I wake up and I'm just drowsy, I'm out of it. And it's just due to the lack of sleep that I may have gotten. And, our strength coach at Tech, Dan Taylor, he's big as far as on just the mental aspect of things. When they even outside of the weight room, he's always talking to us about the importance of sleep and the benefits it gives the body. Your body recovers when you sleep. And, ultimately it's just, outside of what you eat, and what outside of the weights and you pick up in the sprints that you run, that's the physical spot. If you come in with a good attitude and ready to attack every day, I mean, that's how you get better.
Basically, if you're in a good mental space, and whatever it takes for you to get into your good mental space. So great info right there. Nadia, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the athletic community, in my eyes, they're so focused on performance, between, the coaches and the athletes and everybody in between. So that's really doesn't have a lot of room for, prioritizing your mental health, when in reality, your mental game is, I'd say, a huge part of your physical performance. And that's something that's, should be shined a light on, because when you are so in your head, and when you're dealing with all of these, mental struggles, and your mental health might not be at its peak, you pretty much have blinders on, and it makes it really hard to, focus your energy on anything else. And so then your physical game suffers. And so I think the athletic community really needs to acknowledge and support mental wellness, because it will ultimately benefit your physical performance. And that's that's a huge thing. Like everybody's looking to better their game. And so, doing the little things to help you and, taking those extra steps to better your mental health and wellness, like it's ultimately going to make you, better on the court, better on the field. And like me personally, like as a track and field athlete, like you have a team, but like when it comes down to it, like it's on you to perform. Like you're the one doing the individual event and you're the one that has to live with the results. So, if you are consistently working on your mental game just as much as your physical game, like you're gonna see the differences. And yeah, one other thing is, oh, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, it's a really crucial aspect, and I think it needs to be touched on more from your coaches starting from a very young age, and taken ownership of by the athletes.
I agree, Nadia, and I think that just the informational piece, even for coaches and administrators, we just don't know enough about it. We probably don't make it a priority to get enough research to know about it. And again, feeling comfortable having these conversations, feeling comfortable being uncomfortable in these conversations is something that we all need to grow in as adults. Want to let everybody know Shambari is gonna go right now. He was terrific. We appreciate everything he did. Thank you for joining us, Shambari, and me and you obviously be in touch in the future. Good luck with everything. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, man.
Eric, want to touch base with you. So we're going to move kind of into our next subject, which is mental health as a must-have, some best practices, some benchmarks, some recommended resources. So as far as mental health goes, give us your definition of mental health from a professional perspective, and then also from a personal perspective.
Yeah, I think mental health is anything that impacts our overall well-being as an individual, right? And I believe that there's a mind-body connection. I think the fascinating thing about what we experience in life is, Shambari was talking about sleep. And the reason why sleep is so important is because our body runs off of energy. We breathe oxygen, we eat food. Together that gets processed in the mitochondria of our cells, and then energy runs throughout the course of our body. If we don't go to sleep at night and we're constantly using this brain over and over and over again and constantly thinking about what if scenarios and being upset about certain situations, we actually don't have enough energy at night, even when we sleep. We go to sleep for 7-8 hours at a time to rest and recharge and to get back. So while sleep's important, what we're doing during the day to let this calm down and slow down and to not always focus on what if, and these scenarios that actually get us into a worse place, the sleep only goes so far, even when you're using 7 or 8 hours of your time to get that sleep. What we focus on, kind of using the verbiage, I know Luke was talking about this, I'll call it a pleasantry of what happens, which is, how are you doing? Good. And you, Luke? Good, right? That's a pleasantry. It's a way of saying hello. The how are you doing and actually finding out about how someone's doing is very different. So I think the most common conversation that happens in the world is those two brick walls talking to each other. How are you doing? Good. And you? Good. And it stops there. So when I go back to like verbiage and what's important, and especially when we're talking about in the athlete world, and you asked Shambari and Nadia the question about, are we putting as much time towards our mental health as we are our physical health? The answer is no. I mean, you can go to any facility and see there's certainly practitioners who focus on it. But why do athletes jump in an ice bath? Because they know that there's a benefit to the lactic acid that's built up in their body. Like, that's not an easy thing to jump in a bath full of ice, right? But they do it because it helps their performance. So when we're talking about the verbiage of what we use around mental health, it's important to talk about things like exercises, right? Instead of practices, or instead of holistic, or instead of alternative, or instead of functional, like, right? All these terms that seem like foofy and new agey, we have to start using the terminology that athletes use. So we call them STAR practices: stress and trauma, active, release, and rewiring. So the stress and trauma that builds from the stuff that you go through in life, you're actively doing something to release and rewiring it. And you're able to focus on that and say, and Nadia brought up the point about performance. Okay, why is a great receiver dropping a pass? It's usually not technique related. Why is a quarterback missing a target? Why is a basketball player missing a free throw? It's usually because they're holding on to this bag of stuff that's getting in the way of mentally their ability to perform using the skill sets that they have. And so when you're able to visualize that think about it in the form of exercises that athletes can actually use. What it becomes is it becomes something that as an athlete you say, oh, I didn't have time for it before. And now all of a sudden you're saying, wait, it's another exercise that's going to help me improve performance, that's going to lighten this load that I'm carrying around. It's as important as jumping in that ice bath. It's as important as lifting that weight. That's where you start working it into the routine. And so I just think being careful about the verbiage that we use and not giving people the out to say, well, that's the add-on. That's if I can fit it in. No, this stuff is, Nadia was saying that she thinks it might be as important. I would even say it's even more important because the plate that we put everything on is our social emotional health. If we don't have social emotional health, good luck learning a play that your team is running. Good luck executing it to the best of your ability. Good luck knowing what the rest of the players on your team are going to do and know their tendencies. We can't have that ability if we aren't at a good place socially and emotionally.
Eric, and to your point, we probably have to dangle that carrot of this can help you achieve more or get to wherever your dreams and goals are to get people to buy in. And then once they buy in, then they bought in already. Now we don't have to worry about it. We know it's better.
I know everyone wants to. I just want to add one thing to that, Daryl, because I know everyone. I'll say it quickly. So we had Derek Anderson, present with us in Michigan. Probably really well-known guy with Ohio State and with Kentucky, and then playing the NBA. And he said, if I'm a player that's carrying around a heavy bag of clothes on my back, and you give me millions of dollars, or you give me a scholarship, in the other hand, it doesn't lighten the load of the bag of clothes that are on my back. The only way that bag of clothes gets lighter is by sticking my hand in, washing those clothes, drying them, put them on the shelf. And so that's the same thing. That bag is dragging everyone down from performance unless you actually get in the bag. It doesn't matter that you're getting the scholarship. It doesn't matter that you're getting the money. What matters is that you actually go in the bag and you clean that stuff out and you lighten the load.
Great points. John, can you touch base with us on, what you define as mental health?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm echoing what Eric said as well. The whole time you were talking about it, all I was thinking was social and emotional intelligence, which is one of the key components that we share with the populations that we serve. We work with, a number of youth nonprofit organizations. And until we really establish a culture whatever population we're serving, where there is self-assessment being taught, self-management in play, motivation and social skills and how to show empathy. Those are basic skills that we should have just across the board. And what's ironic is that we tend to learn these things as small children, or we're told that, we're teaching these things as we're kids. However, we grow up and everything goes out of the window. So yeah, that based in social and emotional intelligence is the primary and key most important part that we have to implement in these cultures. I mean, there are all types of, breaks in focus when it comes to negative and internal factors that we're dealing with psychologically. And so that definitely plays a role in athletic performance. It can cause poor performance because of the distractions and that lack of focus. And so with all the physical disruptions, the muscle tightening, whatever is happening as a result of the psychological things that are going on, long term, this begins almost like the snowball effect. And so not only are you dealing with injuries, a mindset, the psychological factors, diagnosis that may not be there, but you also have that physical factor as well. And so that can lead to one's demise sometimes. So you want to make sure you're seeing a professional.
I agree. And as a coach, we always say your mind can only focus on so many things.
That's right.
So if you have a bunch of distractions and a bunch of different things that you're trying to concentrate on and correct and you're worried about, it just makes it very difficult to concentrate on the task at hand and do the task at hand very well. So if you are, practicing mental health and mental wellness, and you're correcting some of the other issues that you have going on outside of that particular activity, then you can go in with more of a clear mind, and more than likely you're going to be better when you hit the court or the field, whatever your activity is. Luke, what are some of the key elements that you think should be a part of any mental health and wellness framework for student athletes, as well as the ecosystem that they are a part of?
I'm just sitting here thinking about this whole panel, thinking, a lot of smart people here, and but the student athletes are the ones that are really, to me, teaching us a lot. And And so my first answer to that is we have to listen to our student athletes. I think that I'm blanking on his name, the kid from Georgia Tech, transfer from Tennessee.
Shimbari.
Shimbari, yeah. Shimbari, talked about how for him, he was, when he made a decision as a senior to sort of change his focus, the fear there was that the people that know him and, whether it was his family or his friends or his peers would think that maybe he's cashing it in, kind of giving up or whatever. And that's that idea of the perspective versus the reality. So as administrators, coaches, we have to realize that if we can help to shine a light on where the realities are, it's going to allow our student athletes to thrive and to fit into their teams and their cultures as well as they possibly can, and to thrive and to have the best outcome for themselves and for the program and for the university. So we got to listen to our student athletes, and I think that's the number one thing. And I'm really grateful for what Nadia has done. I mean, this was something, this Scratch the Stigma campaign was something that she came up with her peers on the student.
I think we might have lost Luke. Nadia, can you touch base with us about your Scratch the Stigma program and kind of what all the school what kind of resources the school gave you and how they kind of helped you propel this program, and just give us a little bit of information on it.
Yeah, so I originally had the idea, just a little brainchild. I wanted to start a project because I saw that there was kind of a gap in resources being utilized within the student athlete population. So I kind of, rallied the troops together of the leaders within our athletic department, the student athletes. They were awesome in helping me, and kind of collaborated to launch this campaign. And my main goal was to kind of create a platform that encouraged student athletes specifically, to own their health, whether it be physical or mental. And I wanted to create a platform that would, promote transparency on the topic. Like, it's not something you keep to yourself. Like, this is something that needs to be talked about, especially in the world of athletics. And so I took the resources that were available on campus, like the counseling center and everything like that, and also a handful of resources that are available online to everybody, and created a website for our student athletes, or created a page off of our athletics website that just spelled it all out for them. It said, this is what the campaign is. This is why, student athletes should be aware of this issue. Here are your resources. Like, here it is. It's being personalized to you. And, your peers are on those posters and everything. And, you can walk across campus and access the resources that are right here for you. So I'm trying to really bridge that gap and really emphasize that, it is okay to go ask for help. And, here are your resources. Like, there's no questions. There's no like, oh, what if this, what if that? Like, if somebody needs it, here it is. And I think a lot of college students or people in general, they're just kind of intimidated to go ask, or scared to ask, or don't have the right knowledge about the resources. And so I tried to, make that as clear as possible to help my peers.
Thank you so much for that, Nadia, and very mature approach, and love your being proactive versus reactive, kind of putting the information all in one template, one page, so that your peers had access to the information and where they could go if they needed help. Because I think sometimes if it comes from the peers, it can be a little bit more beneficial than if it comes from adults, because you guys are a little bit more comfortable with each other, and you also speak the same language and use the same social media. And, y'all look at us like dinosaurs sometimes. So sometimes when you guys say it, it comes across a little bit better. Mario, want to touch base with you about, obviously, the pandemic is something that no one expected, but it's had a huge impact and huge influence on student athletes and people in general. But I just think the anxiety of student athletes as it pertains to this particular panel, not being able to train, not being able to be around their teammates, not being able to be around their friends, kind of what impact do you think this has had? and then what can we do now to help these these student athletes go through this situation, and what are we going to be able to do going forward?
I think you said something major right now that a lot of the kids are going through and feeling. It's just a bunch of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
It's an uncertain time. Even as adults, things are very uncertain. Things are unstable. And this is a time, especially in basketball, where you have a lot of live periods where kids are really auditioning to get scholarships. And so right now, those seniors that were hoping to get offers, they're in a very unpredictable place, and so mentally, just imagine what we're going through as adults, and for the kids to have to try to wrestle with, well, man, I was hoping to be getting this offer or that offer at this time of the year. It's a real tough time. I think as coaches, our job right now is really to build relationships. This should help you really do what you should be doing already. You should really be working hard to check in on your kids. I do understand that at this time, you want kids to be in shape and to try to get better and to do whatever they can to stay sharp with their skills. But I think the most important thing is to make sure that, emotionally, we're there to support the things that they're going through. I just feel like we've had the opportunity to do a couple Zoom calls with the kids and our team, the kids on the team and that type of thing as a group. And, salute to Coach Huff for what he's done for our program to try to make sure that we stay in contact with our kids. But then individually, we're trying to reach out to the kids. And I just think it's a territory that we haven't been in. And so we are really, really trying to pull from a lot of different resources to try to help our kids make it through this tough time.
Great. So we got a couple more topics we're going to touch on, but before we do that, let's go ahead and let Nadia and Luke kind of touch base up with us about how the college season was cut short for all spring sports. From a student athlete perspective, losing your actual sport and losing your season, which is, I can only imagine, traumatic being a senior. And then also for Luke, from your perspective, from a sports information perspective, having to give out all the information, make sure that your alumni, your boosters, your administrators, everyone knows what's going on, and having to be able to communicate that and also communicate that to your student athletes. And then we'll finish out with how the current status of race is impacting mental health with John and Eric. So Nadia, let's go ahead and start with you.
So as I stated before, I am a women's track and field athlete. So our outdoor season is in the spring, and we had one meet before we got the news that the NCAA, postponed all competition indefinitely, which ultimately means my senior season was canceled. I graduated, so They granted us a waiver to compete again, but ultimately for a lot of people that's not in the cards to rearrange your plans completely and go back to school. So this whole past senior year, and honestly like all 4 years, it's like you're kind of gearing up for your victory lap, your final senior season, like everything's coming together. And then I was planning on podiuming at my conference events and going into the postseason and doing my thing and just really performing at my peak. And then that would be kind of, the close to my athletic career, as I didn't plan on going, professional in any sense of the word. So that was kind of, for me, it was going to be the final, awesome chapter before my athletic career is over. And that got pulled right out from under me. And so that was heart-wrenching. And I know everybody across the country that has competed in, spring collegiate sports feels the same way as I do. And even some of winter sports got cut off a little bit in the postseason. So there's a lot of people out there that are in the same boat. And that, I think, a huge event like that is like a catalyst for, some, mental health issues potentially emerging, that, just some big thing like that. And so me personally, it was a roller coaster of emotions at first. And it was hard for me to wrap my head around it. It took a couple weeks. I refuse to kind of let it go. And I think sometimes you kind of need to lean into the emotion and really, experience it instead of like pushing it down. So that's what I tried to do. And life goes on. Ultimately, life goes on, and things don't work out how you intend them. Sometimes, even if you work really hard to achieve, the goal that you had in mind. And I think that's something that this has really taught me, and that, everything that athletics has taught me has built my character and built my resilience. And so now I'm using those tools in this situation, and I'm finding different avenues to kind of express myself and stay active and everything like that. So now I guess technically I'm no longer a collegiate athlete, and that is okay. And it really stinks. I didn't get to do what I intended to do, but things will be okay, and you will find other avenues to showcase your dedication and your competitive side and your drive and everything like that. Like things will work out. You will find a new passion, or you will continue your passion next year, and it'll be okay.
Great perspective. Luke, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm sitting here listening and looking at Nadia as she speaks, thinking about how she went through that experience and then said, you know what, we're going to push forward with this. We all kind of thought this scratch the stigma idea was kind of dead in the water, with school going virtual and athletics being canceled and suspended, and then Nadia comes up and says, let's do this. Let's finish this. So that's the kind of resolve and resiliency you see that our student athletes have inside of them, and that we can help to help encourage and help grow. And so that's really exciting. I just, tons of information. I've been reading a lot from all kinds of different folks, but one thing that's really struck me that I think is really great information for folks who care about student athletes in this time of COVID, is that, about 80% of the student athletes say that they felt really supported by their coaches and administrations through this time. But also 1 in 4 have said they're really struggling with their mental health. Yeah. So I think that shows that we need to make the mental health piece part of that big picture, even in their minds, because those numbers to me don't add up correctly. If you're really struggling mentally, then you probably haven't gotten the support that you really need. But I don't think our student athletes have learned that they should expect that from us. But as educators and coaches, they should. And so I think that's just really important. And it goes to what Tamario was saying earlier, is that we have to really right now dig into that area with our student athletes. And it gives us a chance to sort of reset and start a new trend of making that a bigger deal and a more important piece of what we do as coaches and administrators.
I agree. I think that, right now it's probably more critical than ever. I think the entire country is kind of under a mental strain, because no one likes uncertainty. No one likes change. So we're going to be living differently and handling ourselves differently in the near future, regardless. And we also don't know how we're going to handle the next wave when that comes. So we know there are things to come, but we don't know when they're coming or what we're going to do to handle it, which is unnerving, to say the least. So I think mental wellness is very, very important. So let's kind of switch gears. We'll let Eric go first, because I know he just did a large conference with the SIAC, which is a historically Black college and university conference. And I know that we have a lot of current race issues going on, which are creating a whole nother strain of mental health and mental awareness, and mental wellness needs to be added to this for young Black males and just Black people in general. But it's also impacting everyone because of the way that it's being handled and all the comments that you see now on social media. You feel closer to things than you used to before. And you're also seeing things that you shouldn't see. I had to talk to my daughters, who are 14, 12, and 9, about a video they saw of a man being murdered, basically. I don't know any other way to describe it. And that's a tough conversation for me to have with them. And I don't think that I felt like this. parenting is more difficult now because of these type of things. My parents didn't have to have these conversations with me because I would not have seen this during my time. So can you guys kind of touch on what you did at the convention, and then kind of what you think where race is playing in mental health right now?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the timing of being contacted by the SIAC conference, Daryl, I think I was telling you that we did some work with them about 6 or 7 months ago with their SAC leaders, kind of what Nadia is with Chico. And then the idea was to do this conference because May is Mental Health Awareness Month with more of the SAC members, right? So a much larger group. And I can't help who I am, right? I'm a 6'4" white dude presenting to, let's be right. Like, it's important to be transparent. I'm presenting about mental health to a majority, like you said, historically Black colleges and universities.
Mhm.
And so what was cool was it came up a lot during the Q&A portions. And I set a lot of the groundwork in that 2 hours that I work with groups about some of the stuff that Shimbari was talking about how it's a 5 and 5 topic, about how it impacts us all, about the different factors like divorce, job loss, breakups, bullying, cyberbullying, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, how there's not a person in this world that doesn't go through one or some of those things, that then allows us as a society to talk about it collectively, right? But I'd be lying if then within using those let's call them traumas, let's call them life stressors as situations, that I'd be the most prepared person to talk about a specific trauma within. So I'll give you an example that doesn't relate to this, and then I'll bring it back to this. You know, one of the athletes that we work with, her name is Amani McGee Stafford, WNBA player. And Amani came with us at Towson University. And we had Hayden Hurst there as a first-round pick, tall white dude also, played for the Ravens, now gets traded to Atlanta, so I'll be down there with you guys. So he's there, and Amani, 6'9", imposing figure, but so eloquent in the way she speaks. She's a poet. And after we spoke with all 1,200 student athletes, we then broke up. This is the way that they want to do it, into men and women, into groups. And what she shared with us, obviously she couldn't share the specifics, is she shared a sexual abuse experience that she had been through, and how many women in that room opened up to her because of having been through something similar, and then not being in the same room with the men at the same time when they were able to open up and share, right? And so the reason I bring that point up is, look, we work with athletes on our alliance like Dwight Good, and athletes on our alliance like Shamika Holtzclaw, right? Folks that can speak to this topic more directly than I can. The role that I can play is to say these aspects of what happened in life impact all of us. They absolutely impact all of us. I mean, Daryl, you just said watching a murder take place. That's exactly how I saw it as well. And it breaks my heart to see that. But it's also not fair for me to be the one who may be being in the shoes of one of the students that we're talking to and saying, I fully understand what you're going through when you see this, because that's not fair for me to say it. Now, when you hold hands with people who've been in those spots and who can say, this is how it does impact me by seeing this, because I'm afraid to go outside, or I'm afraid. I mean, what happened in the Central Park video, where that woman used the fact that the man who was asking her to clean up or to put the dog on the leash is basically calling the cops and saying, I'm using that as a weapon, what your color is. I mean, that's an absurdity that as a white man, I haven't had to deal with, right? So the important thing is for me to show empathy, for me to show camaraderie, for me to show that I'm along with folks who can further address this issue, to set the groundwork about all the different things that impact us, to acknowledge how race impacts mental health, but then also hold hands with people who can talk to this topic directly and say, I'm with you on this. And not only am I with you, this is an important point I just want to end on, is not only am I with you, like, you know, I'm going to put up the hashtags and say I'm with Floyd and stuff like that, but actually talk about what are some parts that I can do as a white guy that you know what, I can educate myself better. I can learn more about this topic. I can read more. I can have more conversations so that I'm better prepared to be able to talk about it more publicly. And I don't think that we should just stop at saying I'm there supporting people. I think we need to do the hard work as well. Just the same way, I'll end on this, I said I end before, is when we look at mental health on a continuum, and we say, oh, there's those who have mental health disorder and then those who just deal with it day to day. Well, we should be understanding each other because we're all on that continuum. It's the same thing here. Obviously not apples to apples comparison, but we need to do more work as a society, understanding what each of us are faced with and are challenged with and are going through.
I agree with everything you just said. What great words. Obviously, my perspective is different than your perspective,
Yes.
but I've never heard your perspective verbalized before. So that's actually, I actually appreciate that, and it's good to hear kind of what your thoughts are, because my thoughts and my experiences, kind of gear my thoughts are different. So
Sure.
I really appreciate that, and it's great for, I'm sure we got a diverse group of people that are watching this, so it's good for everyone to have their opinion and be able to get, their thoughts out. Mario, you have something that you want to touch base on the issue as well?
I definitely do. I feel like, Eric, I heard you say something earlier about social and emotional health.
Yeah.
And right now, just as a country, our social and emotional health is out the window. Me being a black man, I share the same, experience that you had, LeBaron, trying to explain to my kids what this is. Not only what it is, but why it continues to happen. It's no excuse. And it's past a conversation on everything that you see on social media. It's past, like you said, the hashtags. It's past, it's time to do something. And when I say do something, I mean we have to learn to come together and actually put some type of campaigns in motion that we not only just have this conversation, but move something forward. The other thing is there are a lot of guys who are working with student athletes across the Atlanta community, whether you coach AAU, whether you coach high school, whatever you do, take this time to find a way to have a conversation with your student athletes about what's going on. Check in with them to see emotionally where they are about this issue. And then after we try to figure out emotionally where they are about this issue, let's figure out where we're going to go. We got to figure that out. It can't just be we just keep having the conversation. We got to figure out where we're going to go with these young people to help them understand that, no, this is not right. But they've been hearing that it's not right. If it's not right, let's figure out how we make it right and how we make it better. That's my challenge to anybody and everybody that's listening. I'm open for anything. It's cool to talk, but we gotta start making some moves.
Great words, Mario, and I wholeheartedly agree with everything you say. I got some final thoughts, but I want to go ahead and let John, because John sparked this earlier with his initial talk, so I'm sure he has some things that he wants to touch base on. Go ahead, John.
I mean, I echo, much of what Eric was saying, and also Mario. This is something that we've been dealing with for quite some time. As far as racially, how mental health is being looked upon or being dealt with, we know that especially like the Black community, ethnic minorities have less access to mental health treatment in general. So wherever they're living, wherever they have access, it's just not there. And so, of course, with that, especially in the lower socioeconomic communities, you're going to receive a poor quality of service as well. So just as people may be looking for mental health professionals to get involved with, it's very important that, during these times, especially, you find someone that can really help affect you in a culturally relevant way, because there will be things that you want to process. I mean, I'm continuing to watch the same video, and not that I want to, but it's just that the media has posted the same exact video. So in these days, we don't have as much control over what our kids are even seeing and watching and internalizing because of what's just on a commercial, what's just on the news. Which we feel like we can sit down and watch together. So we need more groups. We need to form more groups. We need to lean on organizations where you may see them engaged in the work and rely on them for referrals as well. And I'm sure, many of the folks on this panel could help to answer those questions for individuals that are saying, hey, I don't even know where to start. One thing that happens with a lot of the youth, the families that we work with, they say, we really wanted a Black therapist or a Black counselor to work with our child. And they feel like, that's going to create the relevant experience that they need. which is important oftentimes. However, Black professionals in the mental health area are very low. It's a very small percentage. I think it's actually less than 10% as a whole that are involved in mental health. So it can be difficult. And so one thing that we help to manage capacity is by providing more groups. Of course, now those groups have gone virtual. But yeah, just lean on organizations that you know of as a referral source to get you to where you need to be for service.
Hey, John, just to piggyback on your point, just so you know, I don't know if you know of this organization, but so there's an organization started, Black Therapists Rock was kind of the base of it. And then I got a buddy from Brownsville, Brooklyn. His name is Lenny Carter. He started this organization called True Circle. Mm-hmm. And it's exactly what you're talking about, is to be able to provide services in underserved communities. And so he helps therapists in that community, many from the Black Therapists Rocks community, build kind of frontward facing, I guess, online presence, and then get their services known out there so that people who are searching for services, they're able to find the connection there. So hopefully I think it's TRU Circle instead of TRU.
Awesome. Good resource.
All right. Appreciate everyone for coming on here. I echo a lot of what you guys just said as we touch base on the last topic. My main thought is kind of one thing on what Mario said. Obviously, I have a little bit of a different outlook than the professionals, but we definitely have to start doing something. And I think, to me, it starts with your local governments. We have to start putting some laws in place that are going to impact the actions of people that participate in these type of activities, and that will also protect our youth and even the adults in some of these cases from going through these situations where we're having innocent people who are unarmed being murdered, and especially on video. But if you don't start with your local governments and you don't start to change some laws, and there are not going to be consequences that are severe, then we're going to continue to have the same actions happening over and over again, and we'll just continue to march and we'll continue to hashtag. But we need to start doing something that will severely impact. Again, thank you everyone who came on the panel. Thank you for all the listeners and people who watched today. I thought this was an unbelievable panel. Everyone brought something different to the table. Scratch the Stigma was a great idea by Nadia. Very impressive for a student athlete to go ahead and follow through. It's one thing to have a great idea, but to follow through and put into action, put it into place is another whole nother thing. Luke, thank you for helping her, build her platform and bringing the information to us. To Eric and to John, you guys were unbelievable. You guys spoke in layman's terms enough for the general public to understand what was going on. Obviously, you guys were a little bit above our head on some things, but you also made us understand what you were trying to say. And Mario, what you're trying to do in the community is unbelievable. Thank you for everything you're doing from Beyond the Bench. You're a terrific guy, one of the best guys I've always known in the business. So thank you for what you're doing, and please keep impacting on in your platform and in your small community. And all we can do is try to do the best we can wherever we're at. Thank you again from SUVtv. We appreciate everything. Guys, everybody be safe. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Nice to meet everyone also.
All right. See you.